Scene 1 of the actress establishes its emotional stakes, not through spectacle or scandal, but through the quietly volatile intimacy of proximity, power, and vulnerability between two women whose lives orbit performance in different ways. And the scene works precisely because it refuses to reduce either Liz or Allie to caricature. Liz enters as the archetypal diva, sharp-tongued, self-mythologizing, bruised by a career that once felt untouchable and now feels precarious. And her resentment toward being assigned a new assistant is not merely professional irritation but an existential wound. A reminder that the industry has decided she needs managing rather than reverence. Allie, by contrast, arrives with a softness that could easily be misread as passivity, yet the film carefully frames her attentiveness, not as submission, but as a deliberate emotional intelligence, one that queer audiences will recognize as a survival skill learned in spaces where women are expected to accommodate, anticipate, and absorb. When Liz lists her expectations, anticipation, obedience, seamless care, the power imbalance is explicit, but what makes the dynamic compelling is that Allie does not resist through confrontation. She resists by remaining present, grounded, and quietly observant, which destabilizes Liz more than defiance ever could. Liz's reminiscence about her past glories functions as both armor and confession, a way of asserting value in a system that measures women by youth and novelty. And Allie's willingness to listen without irony creates the first fissure in Liz's performative hardness. That fissure widens during the night terror, a moment that recontextualizes Liz's abrasiveness as a defense built around fear rather than arrogance. The choice to have Liz hide this vulnerability is crucial, reflecting how women, especially queer women in public-facing careers, are often trained to conceal fragility lest it be weaponized against them. Allie's response is not curiosity or pity but care. She stays through the night, offering quiet presence rather than solutions, embodying a form of intimacy that many queer viewers will recognize as deeply familiar and rarely validated on screen. The next morning's reversal, where Liz berates Allie for letting her sleep in, underscores how shame often follows vulnerability, particularly for women who have been punished for needing help. And Allie's restraint in that moment becomes an act of emotional labor that is both generous and costly. Later, when Liz is stood up on her date, the film avoids turning the moment into melodrama, and instead frames it as a small, cumulative loss that reopens old wounds around desirability, aging, and worth. Themes that resonate broadly with women, but carry particular weight in lesbian contexts, where visibility and validation are often scarce. Allie's comfort in this moment is gentle and grounded, yet it also marks a turning point where admiration begins to blur into desire, not in a sudden rush, but as a slow-burning recognition that care has already become attachment. The tension Allie feels is not framed as forbidden or transgressive, but as overwhelming precisely because it has nowhere to go. She exists in a role that demands invisibility, while her feelings insist on being acknowledged. When the kiss finally happens, it is brief and charged not because of physicality, but because of what it represents. A rupture in hierarchy, a refusal to remain unspoken, and a moment of becoming visible to oneself. For queer audiences, this scene mirrors the lived experience of navigating attraction in spaces shaped by power dynamics, where desire often emerges alongside caretaking, and where naming it can feel both risky and liberating. Society's discomfort with women expressing love for each other persists because such moments challenge entrenched narratives that frame women's intimacy as either decorative or threatening. Here, it is neither. It is messy, human, and rooted in emotional truth rather than fantasy. Liz and Allie symbolically represent two pressures queer women often face: the demand to perform strength at all costs and the expectation to make oneself small in service of others. Their interaction exposes how these pressures collide and how connection can emerge not from perfection but from mutual recognition. Scene 1 of the actress succeeds because it understands that desire is not born in grand gestures, but in shared nights, withheld confessions, and the quiet courage it takes to stop pretending you feel nothing at all, offering viewers not spectacle but something far rarer: recognition. Scene 2 of the actress deepens the film's emotional terrain by transforming what initially appears to be a simple workplace disruption into a layered meditation on aging, relevance, desire, and the fragile ways women learn to see themselves through each other's eyes, particularly within systems that reward youth while discarding experience. Serene, waking alone, scrolling her phone before reluctantly rising, establishes a quiet loneliness that contrasts sharply with her public persona. She is a woman accustomed to being summoned, not interrupted, and the knock at the door feels less like routine than intrusion. The arrival of Lainey, unexpected, unfamiliar, and immediately destabilizing, throws Serene into defensive mode, and her rudeness is less cruelty than reflex, the armor of someone who has learned that warmth is often mistaken for weakness. Lainey's gentle persistence, her nervous eagerness to please, and her instinct to soften Serene with admiration reflect a dynamic many queer women recognize: navigating power through emotional attunement rather than confrontation, especially in spaces where asserting oneself outright can feel dangerous. When Serene begins to thaw after Lainey expresses genuine appreciation for her work, the film subtly reframes praise as intimacy, not flattery, and the acting exercise Serene shares becomes a symbolic handoff rather than a lesson. This exercise, designed to build intimacy between screen partners, mirrors the emotional proximity already forming between them, suggesting that connection is not manufactured but revealed through attention and vulnerability. Lainey's anxiety about attending the premiere underscores her position as someone on the threshold of visibility, unsure how to inhabit public space without shrinking, and Serene allowing her to choose from her old outfits becomes a poignant gesture of trust and continuity, a way of lending not just clothes but confidence, history, and permission to belong. That the outfit comes from Serene's past matters. It is an act of generosity that acknowledges Lainey's future without denying Serene's legacy, challenging the cultural narrative that women must compete across generations rather than support one another. Lainey's decision to return to Serene's bedroom after the premiere, sneaking in quietly but inevitably waking her, reads not as intrusion but yearning, a desire to share joy with the one person who made her feel seen, and Serene's initial insistence that Lainey go celebrate elsewhere reveals her fear of being the wrong kind of anchor, needed but not chosen. The argument that follows, the next morning, brings this fear to the surface, exposing Serene's terror that Lainey's admiration is misplaced, that obsession has replaced genuine care, and most devastatingly, that the world has moved on without her noticing. This confrontation resonates deeply with queer audiences who understand how easily women are taught to measure worth through external validation, and how brutal it can feel when that validation wanes. Serene's accusation that no one really cares about her anymore is not self-pity but grief, mourning a version of herself that once felt indispensable, while Lainey's hurt reflects the pain of being dismissed not just as an assistant but as someone whose feelings are real and consequential. When Serene retreats to put on a dress and makeup before returning to Lainey, the act is layered with meaning. It is both performance and preparation, an acknowledgement that she has always known how to step into the light even when she feels undeserving of it. Yet this time, she is not dressing for an audience or a camera, but for a conversation, signaling a shift from external to internal validation. Telling Lainey that she reminds her of herself reframes their connection as reflective rather than hierarchical, collapsing the distance between diva and assistant into a shared emotional lineage shaped by ambition, insecurity, and longing. Their leaning in to kiss is not presented as conquest or scandal, but as recognition, a moment where both women allow themselves to be seen not as roles but as people. Society's discomfort with scenes like this persists because they refuse to sanitize or sensationalize women's desire. Instead, they locate it within everyday power dynamics, emotional labor, and the quiet courage it takes to admit need. For lesbian viewers, the scene mirrors the complicated pathways through which attraction often emerges, through mentorship, care, conflict, and self-recognition. While for women more broadly, it affirms that intimacy does not belong solely to youth or certainty but can arise precisely at moments of doubt and transition. Scene 2 of The Actress insists that becoming visible is not about reclaiming relevance in the eyes of the world, but about allowing oneself to matter deeply to another person, and in doing so, to oneself, offering not fantasy, but something far more radical, emotional truth.